good evening, wherever you may be dialing in from. My name is Amir. I am head of strategy at a climate tech firm based in Hong Kong called Carbon Base. And this is a pleasure to welcome you all here today for the Green Talent Forum. We have two very exciting speakers coming up today who will be able to shed some further insight and expertise into the field of decarbonisation, looking at the biggest threat and opportunity of our time. And we'll further be discussing the impacts of investment, the economy, and poverty as it relates to this topic. To firstly introduce our two speakers today, we have Mustapha Mokass, who is the CEO and founder of Earth Technologies, BV, and Carbon 2049. And we also have Hiba Rizk, who is the Senior Program Specialist at the EBRD. But I think to commence things, just before we get into the questions, if Mustapha and Hiba, if you would both like to give a brief introduction around your work and why your call to action relates to this area. So we can maybe start with Mustapha.
Thank you so much. So hello, everyone. Very pleased to be here. So, and thank you, Amir, for introducing the panel. And thank you for Localized to having us here. So I spent almost 20 years on carbon market, carbon finance, climate finance. My main focus in various organizations, international organizations, but also on private sector and government. My main focus is really we can't solve the climate crisis without leveraging technologies to decarbonize at scale. And to do so, we need to mobilize private capital at scale. So this is what I'm going to be addressing, and also giving a little bit of perspective on the opportunities for youth, on the green jobs opportunities based on this perspective. Thank you.
Hello, I'll go ahead. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm happy to be here today. Thank you, Localized, for setting this up. Thank you, Amir, for short introduction. So I've been in the field for about, I would say, more than 10 years. I reconverted into this green space by conviction, and because I see the opportunities, and we will discuss a little bit more the opportunities for you and for future jobs in the green space in the discussion. I've been on the consulting side, supporting private sector and public sector in strategies and decarbonization. I've also worked in climate finance, and right now working for a financial institution that's supporting SMEs in their development capacities, where I am able to bring a focus on green and the green transition. Yeah, so I'm very happy to be able to support in the implementation of all the plans and also the development of certain strategies nationally and hopefully also regionally.
Thank you so much to both of you. So I think to just get right in, would you both briefly be able to give your insights and to briefly define what decarbonisation is and why it is crucial for addressing climate change?
Hiba, you want to start?
Sure. So I'll start with climate change, and I mean we'll probably have a lot of similar opinions, so we'll try not to repeat ourselves. But I'll take this one first. So climate change action against to fight against climate change can be split into two main categories, where we have mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation is how we are combating the generation of greenhouse gas emissions and how we can reduce them. And decarbonization is a key concept in this mitigation part. Adaptation is how we react to the changes of climate change. So when we're seeing all these increased flooding, droughts, fires, etc., so there's a increasing climate risk, increasing climate issues that require that require a call to action to support and to adapt to. So for mitigation, the decarbonization as a response to mitigation, it's really how we're reducing our greenhouse gas emissions through strategies, sectors, through R&D, through specific measures, through energy, through all of what we're hearing. So renewable energies, energy efficiency, reducing our impact, reducing our carbon footprints at a small scale, at a company level or an individual level, and at a larger scale at sector level or at a country level. So I'll keep it short for that.
Yes, so decarbonization, actually, economy has been growing in the past century based on fossil fuel burning. So if you look at the different revolution over time, you will see that the GDP growth has been actually following a trend that is correlated to CO2 emission. So decarbonization is how we could today decouple economic growth at the global scale from CO2 emission growth. So to do that, so we have COP system. So COP is like, everyone know COP. This year we have COP28 in Dubai, which is very important because based in an oil state that is doing a fantastic thing for decarbonization for a long time, even despite being an oil state. So it's really how we can promote a joint perspective, joint actions in different countries to decarbonize. The challenge that we have is like we have OECD countries. They are responsible because they had the growth already. So they are responsible of climate change today. So this is a fact. The challenge is the growth now is from the higher growth is from emerging countries. So then the challenge is how can we support emerging countries to decarbonize fast enough to reduce the CO2? And to do that, more than 80% of the action need to be focused on energy production, the way we use energy in transport, building, and industry in different sectors by promoting renewable energy, but not only. And I think we will deep dive a little bit more in the following questions.
So thank you so much to both. To follow on, can you outline the key pillars or fundamental strategies that underpin successful decarbonisation efforts and explain why of these pillars is crucial to achieving meaningful results? So Hiba, if you would like to start.
Yes, so I think Mustapha touched on one key point already. It's the energy and the energy sector. Decarbonization, decarbonizing the energy sector is one of the key pillars through clean energy transition, through the increase of electrification and energy storage. This is really crucial in removing ourselves from our dependency to fossil fuels and moving to cleaner forms of energy and greener forms of energy. What we have right now is still not sufficient, which is why research and development and innovation is a key also pillar. For example, we're seeing a lot of research and innovation in green hydrogen, which is one of the future solutions for the green energy transition, in addition to renewable energies that we've seen as more research and development is going on in those fields, that we are reducing the price and making them more accessible. So that's one of also the key. Another pillar I would say is like the regulatory framework and institutional framework. So we have that at two levels. We have it at the international level, where we have international conventions that, like the Paris Agreement, that sets global targets that where we want to stay below 1.5 degrees Celsius, and try to reach that by 2050. We also have more local regulations, like the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, for the EU, and similar mechanisms that are being put in place in other areas in the world. That also leads to this carbon pricing. Then we have one of the key pillars also is, how do we finance this? So the financing of decarbonization. So we've seen the development of the Green Climate Fund, that aims to finance projects in different countries, but we also have financial institutions that are making investments or funding more available to investments in the green space through financing facilities that are dedicated to green, through grants that support research and innovation. So there is a lot happening. So for me, these are like some of the key pillars that we need to address. And finally, the last one would be the mindset of people, and for all of us to be actors in this race to reduce our emissions, and to be active, and for this transition to also be just. And that, as Mustapha mentioned, the causes of emissions are not correlated with the impact. We've seen countries that have not contributed to not much, at least, or very, very minimally to greenhouse gas emissions, that are now also needing support on adaptation, because the climate crisis is global. So these are the key aspects. I think I'll let Mustapha complete if he has any.
Thank you, Hiba. Yes, indeed, I will echo Hiba points on energy. So indeed, the thing is, we have a growing population in emerging countries that is growing much faster than OECD. So the question is, how can we produce more energy to sustain the growth of the population and economy while curbing CO2? How can we do that? We can act on the offer, which is clean energy. So typically, when we say clean energy, what does it mean? Solar, wind, as we know, but there are other ways. You highly rightly pointed out, Hiba, on green hydrogen. So different projects are now popping up. So we can deep dive a little bit on green hydrogen and how it works. But the key question is, what is the market for green hydrogen? How companies can use green hydrogen, so it will be more industrial use. So industry can use hydrogen, green hydrogen, to decarbonize. Then the other element is, how can we act on the demand on energy? So improving energy efficiency in buildings. Buildings represent 40% of global CO2, which is huge. So air conditioning, as you know, we are living in a, let's say, hotter world almost everywhere. So then we are increasing the air conditioning. The other element is data economy. Data today represent 5% of global CO2. Very few people know. So the key question is, so the cloud compute. So with AI, with 5G, 6G, how can we support and lower the impact on energy consumption of the data economy? While Perspective ITU is expecting over 20% of energy consumption by 7-8 years time will come from data. So then how can we use more energy, renewable energy, but also different type of technology to control that energy consumption of the data economy. Then, of course, transportation, so mobility. Mobility represent almost 30%, depending on the countries, of CO2. So, of course, EV are a good solution, electric vehicles. But the key question that underline EV is the mining. So how can we source the mining materials that we need for the EV batteries in a sustainable way? Then there is a geostrategic also issue that will be who controls the minerals that are needed for the energy transition. What I want to give with this very quick background is like to share with our audience, youth people, that the opportunities for jobs are significant in this sector, and not necessarily in the one that look obvious, that you see obvious. But more, one last element that I didn't mention is energy storage. The only way we can scale renewable energy is to improve energy storage. And you can look at different type of startup and technologies that are growing very fast. The way we will improve energy storage will unlock clean energy. So I will stop here.
Thank you very much for that, Mustapha. So in the context of decarbonisation, how do you both prioritize between mitigation and adaptation strategies? And what considerations guide these decisions? And can you explain these two? So Mustapha, we'll maybe start with you this time.
Yeah, sure. I think I will speak a little bit on finance. So what is the finance needed to decarbonize the world by 2050? So we need $1.5 trillion on a yearly base. We are only less than $0.5 trillion, to make it simple. So the finance gap is 1 trillion. So then this is only on the mitigation side. So of course we can deep dive on that. So why private investors are not investing so much in this decarbonization? For various reasons, the risks, understanding of the technologies, but also return in some cases. So the one of the solution is risk. So how can we price carbon, the value of carbon, risk for companies? And I think we are seeing more and more the CDP, Carbon Disclosure Project and others that are trying to give more transparency to that risk, which is very important for investors to unlock more money to these fields. On the adaptation, what I wanted to mention, and we have more participants from MENA region, from my understanding, and MENA region represent very few, a teeny piece of CO2, but the impact is like one of the worst. So we have more growth. You saw what happened in Libya recently. This is a fact of from a climate change effect. So adapting is significant. We have growth, dramatic growth in our countries. So the key question is how can we finance more adaptation project, while today adaptation finance is only I think 15% of climate finance, while we need much more. So I think putting solutions out there, honestly, solutions are available. So the key question is we need more money. We need more money for this kind of project to adapt or also to mitigate.
Yes, so to echo a little bit what has been said and to add to it, in terms of the priorities, these are really like case-by-case basis, country-by-country basis. What we've been seeing is that, I think from the numbers that I've seen, is that more than 90% of the funding right now is geared towards mitigation. And that adaptation, in addition to it not receiving as much of the funding, it's very complicated to assess the needs of adaptation. So some of the adaptation is maybe receiving funding, but not knowing that it's for adaptation. We're seeing differences in our rain patterns, which is affecting agriculture. So there are lots of new technologies and new ways of doing agriculture to take into account these changes. New practices. We are seeing less water, so we're going into other forms of generating water. So we're seeing the rise of desalination and all of these projects that are here to support. Some of these are infrastructure projects that would in any case be done in developing countries. So we're talking about roads, we're talking about dams, we're talking about energy systems. So how do we, the question really is, how do we develop and build these infrastructures, taking into account climate change? So really understanding the risk, understanding the impact, doing our due diligence to understand if we're building on the coast, what's the impact of the sea level rise, what is the impact in certain areas of drought or like heavy rainfall. Certain areas that we used to be able to build on, we cannot build on anymore because they are climate risk areas for flooding. Areas that have not seen water in decades are now flooded with the rainfalls that are in a few hours that match rainfall for months or even a year's worth of rainfall in just a very short amount of time. So really, we are adapting as a world to climate change, but we need to really understand how to build these projects. So a lot of these projects, like you said, are not bankable. They're not projects with high returns, unlike what we can see on certain energy projects where we have return on investment that could be 3 to 5 years for some renewable energy projects. For some energy efficiency projects, we can even see even less. But the financial system understands these projects. Adaptation projects really are key to keep our ecosystems alive, to keep our supply chains alive, and to be able to adapt to this change. But what we're seeing today is more effort going into mitigation, and I mean, it's for obvious reasons, because energy transition is really a key component to reducing carbon footprint, and we want to limit the trend of increasing greenhouse gas emissions and reaching a point of no return. So it's really hard to decide where to put the money and where to focus on. And this is something that can only be done at strategic levels, that governments can decide for their own in their own areas where they want to what they want to focus on and where. But really, even as companies now, everybody is taking into account the climate risk, which is a new. Before we used to talk about environmental risk. Now climate risk is also part of the discussion, and that's slowly going to bring adaptation more and more into the picture, and hopefully attract more funding.
Thank you so much. So what emerging trends do you see in the field of decarbonisation, and how are your organizations adapting to them and filling the gaps? Hiba, if you'd like to start.
Well, we discussed a few of these, so I'll touch upon them again. So in the energy sector, which is a key one, we're seeing we're seeing the rise of renewable energy use. And this is something that, like I said, is a clear-cut finance. At EBRD. we have been financing the energy transition across the countries of operation for a very long time, more than 10 years already, at least here in Morocco. But we have also research and development and innovation. So through either digital applications that will support in data collection and in understanding really the carbon footprints, and so that we can build better strategies to mitigate them. In new technologies such as green hydrogen, and last week there was the World Power to X Summit held in Marrakesh, where actors from around the world came together to try to discuss the key barriers and challenges of developing this new value chain of energy creation, and also generating new molecules such as green ammonia that has applications in agriculture for decarbonizing fertilizers, and future fuels that will support in decarbonizing sectors that are very difficult to decarbonize right now with the renewable energies only. And like we said, this requires financing and structured finance solutions that are more blended, where you have the financing but also subsidies to help. Yeah, I'll stop there and let Mustapha also.
Can you, Amir, can you specify a little bit your question?
So, Mustapha, the question was, what emerging trends do you see in the field of decarbonisation, and how are your organisations adapting to them and filling the gaps?
Okay. So yes, so we touch upon that. The emerging trends today, I think green hydrogen makes a lot of sense. The thing is, very few countries are well positioned to develop green hydrogen. Morocco is one of the best case, simply because you need solar. So a huge mix, very good mix in terms of energy capacity production from solar and wind. So you can't develop green hydrogen without both. And Morocco is very well positioned because of having also the Atlantic Ocean, which allow to develop that, while you also have a market, which is Europe nearby. Then you have other countries, Chile, for example, that is trying to develop that, but the position is different because Chile is far from markets. So, and the key question would be what type of green hydrogen derivative product, how to transport those products. So the trends, to answer your question properly, is I don't think we will decarbonize the world by reinventing out of the box things. We need to develop product that fit within the current infrastructure framework. So the case of green hydrogen is a good one. Why? Because you can liquefy green hydrogen. So you can use then the same transportation as you do for gas today and also for oil. So that way, this is why it's a potential good opportunity. So this is one of the trend. The other one, I already touched upon that, but I think it's important to deep dive a little bit, is energy storage. So the proper of clean energy is it's alternative. So it's not like a burning coal. Burning coal is very easy, or like having gas in a car is very easy because you burn that and then you have a constant power. Solar and wind is different. So it's like it depends. It's very fluctuate. So then the key is how can we store that at a better cost? That way you can provide a more stable energy that can reach the grid, but can also be off-grid. So this is then the trend that I see is more off-grid clean energy production and energy storage that is also more decentralized and off-grid. That's the way I think I see a good trend on the short term.
Thank you very much. So, Mustapha, this question is for you. Could you please tell us about your own personal journey and motivation that led you to found Carbon 2049?
Yes, yes. So indeed, I have been in the field for a long time, and for me, I discovered this topic by starting working on the clean development mechanism, which is a Kyoto Protocol mechanism that allow developing countries to develop clean, let's say, clean projects. And those kind of projects allow you to generate carbon credits, and then that way you can access new type of finance for your project. So, and then I saw very quickly, I started in Morocco, and I saw very quickly the challenges. The challenges were transparency. How can we give more transparency for carbon buyers for projects? And this is really a challenge today, still today. So then I joined during the Kyoto Protocol. We had no visibility on the legislation. And who is setting up the carbon market legislation is the UNFCCC COP system. So then we have been waiting for COP21 to set up that. Since that time, things have been improving, let's say, with each country having what we call NDC plan to develop carbon-based, let's say, carbon finance mechanism or carbon markets. So today you have like more than 40 carbon markets in the world. This is very well, not very much known. You have Europe, which is the leading one. China has opened its own carbon market during COVID, right after COVID, actually. So it has become the largest carbon market in the world, but it's only for Chinese company. And then you have President Biden in Sharm el-Sheikh at COP27 announcing that US will now push for a carbon market too. So then the real challenge that I have been focusing on, why we created Carbon 2049, is a platform that allow to give you, using the blockchain technology, transparency on the different projects that raise globally, either on adaptation or mitigation. And that transparency, this is the missing link actually, that will allow to mobilize more private capital for decarbonization. So this is my, very, very briefly, my journey.
So, Hiba, can you please provide an overview of the EBDR's decarbonisation initiatives and their impact on the regions that you work in?
Yes, so EBRD is a large institution that has that operates on many different levels. So we support large companies and public institutions in financing their decarbonization. So through direct investments that have a direct impact on or at least a component that will have a green impact and decarbonization impact. We have set up financing facilities that work with the local banks, what we call partner financial institutions, that then bring the funding or blended funding in the form of financing and grants to smaller size companies. And also at even a different level, we have a branch that's dedicated to SMEs and their development. And we support them in really from the start, so on the studies, on identifying the needs, on doing their energy audits, their carbon footprints, supporting them from the get-go. And then we have the other instruments to support in their in financing their transition. And this is something that is done across the regions, and that the green transition is actually one of our core values at the bank, and we make sure that that all of our projects have a greening component.
So, in your opinion, what policy changes or regulatory measures could accelerate decarbonisation efforts on a global scale?
So we've touched upon this a little bit before. So we have high-level frameworks or policies where different governments, entities they sign on and pledge to participate in these goals. So as Mustapha mentioned and we mentioned before, we have the Paris Agreement that is a key framework to start with. From this, all countries have submitted their nationally determined contributions of how they are going to reach this goal by 2030. We have net zero pledges for 2050 that are also being developed at country levels. But as I like to say, I mean, these are the frameworks and the big picture, but really what we need is everyone at the corporate level, at the company levels, to start working on their decarbonization plans, on their policies, and not only as a reaction to policy framework, as we've seen with the announcement of the EU tax on imports. The rush to try to decarbonize, to understand, to react really to this. This is something that is eye-opening, and a lot of companies have started their own journeys in decarbonization strategies and seeing how they can decarbonize themselves, but also support their supply chains in decarbonizing their efforts. So how the larger companies can support the smaller companies that are part of different value chains and ecosystems. That's very important. But policy is really a driving force and can also be a blocking mechanism that we see sometimes. The technology developments are moving really fast and the policy is behind. We're already talking about green hydrogen, but we haven't yet seen the standards on the safety for the transportation for this, on different mechanisms that may or may not prevent it from crossing borders. We have the different norms also that are national but also international that can that we see that, for example, in food qualities. There are some types of ingredients that are banned in certain countries because of health reasons, and not in other countries, which means that some products can be sold in certain markets and not others. So the standardization, these norms are also a part of this policy and something that we need to think about. And yeah, definitely how all of this can happen in a just way, and that the populations also do not get hindered or impacted negatively by this by these policies and forced to change.
Yeah, to jump quickly because I see many questions on the chat. My opinion on this is I think COVID is a very good example, and we have been all feeling what does it mean to not have freedom to go outside because of a virus. And I think government will start acting like during COVID time because of climate change. And I cannot we don't have time to deep dive on that, but it's a reality. Then in terms of policy, and for me, the opportunity to have a climate decarbonization policy is also when you see the inflation that we are living today, the countries that are the most robust are the ones that have the most resilient economy, meaning they have more green energy, and they also have a more agriculture integrated systems. So decarbonization would, I think, need to focus, in particular in our countries, on food security and also in energy security. I think these two elements, we need to see decarbonization policy as a way to prevent future shocks on the global economy. We are in an integrated economy, and when you saw what happened with the Ukraine crisis, we are living in an inflation world today that has been created by COVID and also by the Ukraine crisis. So I think the policy that we need to push for are in this perspective.
Thank you so much. So we're going to start taking some Q&A from the audience. So we have a question from Susanna Chulu, who is in Zambia, and she is the country's only energy systems engineer. So the energy sector is still not developed, and there's huge popularity around green businesses. So Susanna is currently considering establishing a waste collection company with the aim of using the waste to produce biomass electricity in the future. What do you think of the initiative in terms of viability and feasibility? And do you think it's better to go in the more mainstream solar direction, or would you approve of going in the direction of biomass energy?
I can take that. Waste to energy projects are very viable, and we see them in many different countries as a source of alternative energy. Renewable energy is a more widespread, well-known, and the cost benefits are very known. But the large-scale projects are at the country level are more difficult to implement, and without the research and development in the batteries, solar energy is still limited to the hours where you have sunlight to be able to generate the electricity from it. But waste to energy solves two problems really in one, because you're solving a land use problem in the landfills where you're putting this energy, which you have also direct emissions of methane that are also contributing to greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. And in addition to that, these projects at a local scale to generate electricity for a specific city or a county or group of villages is a very good solution. And yes, I encourage you to look at both and to see how to be able to complement between the two, where you could have maybe solar during the day and the energy production from waste or biomass also. The other point is for biomass, it comes in different forms where you can create it in small forms to replace fuels, for example, for stoves, or for the local community that is using other forms of heating, or that can cause deforestation, for example, if they're looking for wood from the forest. And if you can replace that with the different technologies that are available now, like briquettes or small fuel logs that are based off of biomass, that could also be very impactful.
Yeah. Yeah, just to echo, I mean, quickly, Susanna, two things. First one, go say there is, can you hear me? You can hear me? Yes. So, Susanna, go for it. If you say there is no other biomass waste to energy project. Second element, to CDM carbon market on the project generated, they, I think, represented almost 70% of carbon market transactions. And that way you can source technologies. Most probably you will find technologies in China for your project because it's the good one and proper one that are the most cost effective for you. On solar, let me know if you need to be in contact with Zambia is doing a great thing. There is a company called Greenco, and they are one of the leaders in Africa on solar energy. To get also the perspective there, you can reach out to Mitchell and happy to connect you with them.
Thank you so much. So we are coming up to our last few minutes. We now have a question from Mohammed Misbah. So what specific policies or programs can be implemented to address the needs of marginalized communities in decarbonisation efforts?
I will try to answer several questions, if you don't mind, Amir, because I see several. So Mohammed is the last one. What specific policy can to address the need of in the company? So, for example, Hiba is well positioned because the EBRD has been doing fantastic job on SMEs support, small companies on energy efficiency. Not only in Morocco, in different regions. So I think accessing capital is really the key for cooperatives, agro company, or small SMEs. Accessing capital, banks will not lend you money, you know, in emerging countries because you don't have collateral guarantees. So what organizations such as EBRD are doing is very important. So this is what I have to say. Then biofuel. Yes, biofuel can play a very important role in decarbonization, but the key question is how do you produce the biofuel? So is it from organic waste? This is what Susanna is intending to do in Zambia, but you can also produce biofuel from green hydrogen. Then I saw somebody said that climate change is something normal and it just hurt. So I need to react to that. It's Earth it somewhere, yeah, is normal and it's just a cycle. So please have a look to IPCC, okay, report. IPCC is climate change panel. It's over 5,000 experts. And just for you information, they are not paid. They are working on voluntary base and they are global. And so the trend, climate change has been effect has been created by human action. It's not a Earth. So I think I don't have time to go a little bit deeper, but I think it's good to mention that. Then in terms of labor, there is a question from, we can maybe answer that question at the end, after I let Hiba, if you want to comment what I said.
Yeah, I mean, I've been also looking at the questions and how these impact. So we need to see, this is we're facing a challenge, and whenever there's a challenge, there are opportunities. So we shouldn't look at it as problems. I mean, if you want to really benefit from this crisis or take away something from it, is that you have to be proactive. There is funding. There are different ways to get the funding. but and there are lots of projects, and the key idea is how do you link between these two. So for marginalized communities, it's about raising your voices, it's about taking proactive action. You see that there is a problem and you have a potential solution that is different from what there is. Go in, look for the funding for startups, for initiatives, for NGOs. Ask around. I mean, you can use this platform, or based on the country that you're in, reach out to different institutions and just keep trying until you find the right fit, or somebody will take you in that direction. The idea is to be able to hear the voices of the youth, of the marginalized communities, of the rural communities, and to be able to include them in the solution. And this is one of the key aspects of the transition, is that it has to be a just transition as well. And this is why events such as the COP are very important, because you have the stronger political or bigger economies that are there, but also the smaller ones that are speaking their opinions and that are trying to leverage financing towards what is most needed, which is what we were talking about before, of trying to also bring the financing to adaptation, and also to research and innovation that is going to impact a smaller scale, but these marginalized communities. I think, yeah. Also to touch on the question on coal, and this is still within what we're discussing right now with the just transition, and why were some countries able to use fossil fuels for such a long time, and now they're ready to transition, whereas these are cheaper sources of fuel or whatever. But this is the opportunity to do things right from the beginning, to access this funding that's available now, which may not be available in the future, at least not with the subsidies, and to be part of this race. Of course, you have to look at prices, and you can't see. But as I was saying, it's a country by country decision to make. Even here in Morocco, we're looking at removing coal. But it's a very complex situation, and we've seen with the war in Ukraine how certain European countries are changing their decarbonization plans in response to this energy crisis. So really be active, try to understand the key components of what's happening in your country, and how you can be part of the solution, because this engagement is what's going to lead you to get into the new jobs, because we're seeing new trends, new sustainability specialists within all types of companies. Even we're seeing circular economy specialists being well needed, and policymakers, and so whatever it is, and in finance, like we were saying, the banks are gearing towards this. So they're looking for people that are engaged and that are ready to learn, because this is a learning process. New technologies are coming up all the time. We need to be able to follow. Nobody was talking about green hydrogen when we started working in this field. Now it's a key topic, and we need to understand how it's made, what are the key challenges, the barriers, how do we solve them. So we're always on the new path, new energy solutions, new ways of working, and learning from key events such as COVID, such as the Ukraine crisis, and so much more. I'll let you.
Thank you so much, Hiba, and to Mustapha. for your insights, your generosity with your time today. I would like to say that that does conclude the end of this session on decarbonisation at the Green Talent Forum. So thank you for joining us today to our audience, and thank you to Localise, who are coordinating and organising this event. If you are interested in learning more about sustainable supply chains, please join the next session starting in a few minutes. And as our panelists mentioned today, please continue with your curiosity and be an agent for change wherever in the world you may be. But thank you again and have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Bye.